Jake Miller did everything right. He saved money every month, avoided debt, had a solid savings account. But by the time he turned 35, he realized he was broke, not because he overspent, but because he believed in an outdated idea. In 2022, he had $30,000 saved. By 2025, that same money could buy 20% less. He felt betrayed by the system, by the rules, by his own discipline. That's when Jake decided to flip the script. He ditched the savings account and found a way to protect his money and grow it without starting a business, without gambling in the stock market, and without overcomplicating things. Today, Jake still saves, but now his money works every day with liquidity, with safety, with real returns. This isn't just a story about investing. It's about mindset. It's about escaping stagnation with one simple decision. If you think saving money is enough, wait until you see how Jake almost lost a whole decade of quiet effort and how he turned it around with a strategy almost no one talks about. But that could change the way you handle your money and your life. Jake was always a meticulous guy. He had spreadsheets, tracked every expense, never missed a bill, and every month, like clockwork, he set aside part of his paycheck for savings. It was automatic, comfortable. It's what he was taught to do. For years, he watched that balance grow slowly and thought he was doing everything right. But then something started to feel off. Gas prices went up, rent climbed. Groceries started hitting harder. And even with all that discipline, he felt more and more suffocated. That's when he ran a simple calculation. How much had his savings actually earned? In real terms, the answer hit like a punch to the gut, less than inflation. In other words, he'd lost money. Jake realized he wasn't really saving money. He was losing buying power. He was losing time. And that's when it clicked. Saving money without a strategy is like trying to fill a bucket with holes. The more you pour in, the more leaks out. The worst part, he wasn't even doing anything wrong. He was just stuck in an outdated system. A system that still traps millions of people. Every single day, Jake was tired of watching his hard work slowly disappear over time. Then one random night, while watching a video like this one, he heard a line that stopped him cold. Your money might actually be safer outside of a savings account than inside it. That one sentence planted a seed of doubt. And from that doubt came the turning point. He started digging, read articles, watched videos, and that's when he stumbled on something no one had ever told him about. T-bills, U.S. Treasury bonds with short-term maturity, safe, stable. And with one game-changing detail, they were yielding over 4% per year. But Jake wasn't an economist. He'd never touched the stock market, so the word bond felt intimidating. Then he realized he didn't have to buy the bonds directly. There was a shortcut, a simpler path, an ETF called SGOV. To him, it was like finding a hidden door in a room he'd been living in for years. SGOV was simple, accessible. It let his money earn returns with daily liquidity and no red tape. And most importantly, it was safe, because the ETF only invests in T-bills that mature in 0 to 3 months, debt backed by the US government. The risk of default? Pretty much zero. And unlike a complex fund or a locked-up CD, he could sell at any time, just like a stock. In his mind, it felt like trading stagnation for freedom. It was like saying, now I'm in charge of my money. Jake didn't become a full-on investor overnight, but he did one simple thing. He stopped burying money and started planting returns. That was the discovery that changed everything. And it might change things for you too, because sometimes the difference between being stuck and moving forward is just learning what no one ever bothered to teach you. Jake had heard about investing before, but every time the word came up, his mind jumped to flashing charts, people yelling at screens, risk, losses, and chaos. That stuff wasn't for him. So even after learning about SGOV, he froze, until one day he opened his brokerage app, typed in SGOV. It popped up just like any regular stock. One click, buy, confirm. That was it. And in that moment, Jake understood. It wasn't that it was hard. No one had ever shown him the way. With SGOV, he didn't need to become an expert. Didn't need to study economics. Didn't need a banker to explain anything. He just needed to understand one thing. He didn't need a savings account anymore. This ETF did the work for him. It took his money, allocated it into short-term secure bonds, the T-bills, and paid him back monthly with dividends straight into his brokerage account. Jake started small. He only moved a portion of what was sitting in savings. The next month, he checked his statement, a 27-cent dividend, and he smiled. It wasn't about the amount, it was about control. He was seeing firsthand that his money could work with no risk and no restrictions. Now, when someone asks him what he does with idle cash, he doesn't hesitate. I put it to work, save simple and better than savings. Because what most people are missing isn't courage. It's information and the chance to clearly see that there's a different way without the confusion. Even after buying his first shares of SGOV, Jake still hesitated. That first week, he opened the app every single day like the balance might vanish. He kept checking the price, the returns, the charts. His mind was still wrestling with one big question. Is this really safe? And when someone asked if he'd pulled his money out of savings, he replied, yeah, but I'm just testing it. Only moved a bit. That was true, but also fear talking. Because even though Jake was doing something smart, he was also doing something new. And new things are scary. His first fear was obvious. What if I lose everything? He didn't fully understand how ETFs worked. He thought if the market dropped, his money would just disappear. So he dug deeper and discovered that SGOV wasn't like a regular stock. It's a fund that only buys short-term U.S. Treasury bills, T-bills with a maturity of up to 3 months. Jake learned that these bonds are considered some of the safest assets in the world. And the chance of default was basically zero. After all, we're talking about the U.S. government, which prints its own money. And then he found out SGOV is run by iShares, managed by BlackRock, one of the biggest asset managers on the planet. And by law, the assets in the fund don't go on the company's balance sheet. In other words, even if BlackRock collapsed, those T-bills would still belong to him. Then came fear number 2. What if I need the money back? Jake remembered all the fine print on CDs and other funds he'd seen before. What if SGOV locked up his money for months? That's when he discovered one of the ETF's biggest perks, daily liquidity. He could sell at any time during market hours, just like a stock. No waiting periods, no penalties, no lockups. That was real freedom. The same liquidity as a savings account, but with returns that actually made sense. But there was still one more fear, harder to explain. What if this is just too complicated? Jake was never the kind of guy to read finance blogs on weekends. He never fully got how interest rates worked. To him, investing was for people with time or extra money. Until he realized he didn't need to know everything. He just needed to know enough that this ETF was a simple tool for a clear purpose, to protect and grow idle money. And when he saw that first dividend hit his account, even if it was small, everything felt different. It wasn't about profit. It was about clarity, control, knowing exactly where his money was and why. Jake almost quit, but he didn't. And because he stuck with it, now his money is really growing. While he works, sleeps, lives, his money works too. The fears didn't disappear, but they lost their power once he had the knowledge. Because in the end, the biggest risk wasn't trying something new. The biggest risk was sticking with what never worked. 6 months after that first SGOV purchase, Jake looked at his phone screen and smiled. It wasn't a jackpot. It wasn't some crazy number. But it was steady, safe, predictable. Every month, the statement showed dividends received, SGOV ETF, 28 cents, 32 cents, 30 cents. For someone used to seeing a savings account make pennies in a year, this was a whole different reality. And the best part, he could withdraw anytime he wanted. His balance was growing slowly, sure, but now with dignity, with direction. No more frustration from watching his money get eaten away by inflation. Jake stopped seeing money as a burden. He started seeing it as a partner, a silent ally, one that works even when he's not paying attention. He realized that true passive income isn't about getting rich overnight. It's about building a foundation that grows through discipline and decisions. A foundation that brings emotional security, mental clarity, and freedom over time. Today's Jake isn't a millionaire, but he's free because he's in control. And maybe that's what real financial success is. Knowing where your money is, what it's doing, and why it's there. While his friends are still arguing over which bank has the best savings account, Jake has already moved on. He realized the gap between staying stuck and moving forward. Might be just a 10-minute decision in your brokerage app. Now he still saves money, but he does it strategically. And while he waits for the right moments to make bigger moves, he knows every cent is protected, earning, and ready to be used. That kind of decision, it's what separates the ones who survive from the ones who grow. And the most powerful part of all this, Jake's not some made-up character. He's a reflection of thousands of people who, just like you, only needed to see a new possibility. Now you've seen it. The next move is yours.